Bagnold is aware of the World War I light car patrol that ventured into Palestine and the Western Desert in Model T Fords with oversized tyres, and throughout the 1920s and 30s he and his comrades travelled thousands of miles across the deserts of Africa and the Middle East in Model T Fords. They travelled to the oasis of Siwa, where Alexander the Great also visited a couple of millennia before, and they even share a meal with some Italian soldiers on the border of Libya and Egypt. On his journeys, Bagnold invents several methods of getting vehicles across the desert. He finds that normal magnetic compasses don't work on his metal vehicles, so he creates the sun compass, effectively a modified sundial that can be mounted on a dashboard. Bagnold retires in 1935, but is recalled to service in 1939 at the outbreak of World War II. Even in 1940, there is only one tarmac road in the whole of Libya, and that runs along the coast. There are a few tracks, but otherwise there is nothing but sand. Bagnold is concerned that the southern flank is open to exploitation by the Italians. From Uinat, an Italian mobile force could travel east and, amongst other things, strike at the railway workshops of Wadi Haifa, cutting communication between Egypt and the Sudan. The Italians could also strike south into French Chad and cause havoc there as well as bringing those French onto their side. Bagnold sees how essential it is to scout out the Italian southern flank and find out exactly what is happening there. So making his way to Matruh, Bagnold meets with 7th Armoured Division's commander, General Percy Hobart, and tells him about the possibility of recreating a unit similar to the light car patrol of World War I. General Hobart likes the idea and sends the plan to his commanders, who turn it down. Disappointed, Bagnold is at least pleased to see that the 7th Armoured are equipped with his sun compasses. They don't use them, but they are equipped with them. It's not until after Italy's declaration of war in June 1940 that Bagnold's ideas are given serious consideration. The strategic picture has changed dramatically. France is now out of the war, and Italy can potentially strike out in every direction with their 250,000 men in Libya. Bagnold's plan is placed on Wavell's desk, and within an hour Bagnold is summoned to the Commander-in-Chief's office and is explaining his proposal. He explains his plan to approach the Italian positions from across the Great Sand Sea, a route his friend Clayton had discovered in 1932, which would maintain an element of surprise. Wavell quizzes him on several issues, and when asked what he would do if there was no signs of enemy activity, Bagnold replies that he'd carry out some piracy on the high seas against enemy convoys. Wavell, suitably impressed, agrees to the scheme, and on the 23rd of June 1940, the long-range patrol is formed. Bagnold is ordered to be ready in 6 weeks, and this isn't an easy task. Bagnold has to go to the Chevrolet company in Alexandria and beg for an additional 14 of their 30 hundredweight Chevrolet trucks, and they can only scavenge 19 from the army itself. The trucks are great, but can't be used on the soft desert sand with all the equipment they're carrying, so they remove the doors, the cabs and the windscreens to reduce the overall weight of the vehicles. They paint camouflage on them and add the 7th Armoured Division's red rat insignia to conceal their true purpose. Bagnold is given a free hand to select his men from other units and gather the necessary supplies and equipment. Failing to recruit Australians because the Australian government doesn't want their soldiers being used in British units, Bagnold instead recruits New Zealanders from their Divisional Cavalry Regiment and Machine Gun Battalion. He wants an intelligent and self-sufficient type of soldier, not a rough and ready to fight sort of person you'd see in the British Commandos. He wants men who can survive out in the desert, and the New Zealanders meet his expectations. Within a couple of weeks, they're ready to set off on their first patrol. Captain Clayton and 7 men set off in 2 trucks from Cairo on the 7th of August 1940. They drive west to Bagnold near Matruh and meet with General Richard O'Connor, commander of the Western Desert Force. O'Connor is the general who would soon show the Italians a thing or two during Operation Compass. Clayton's patrol then moves south, reaching the Sewer on August the 8th. Moving west, they reach the Kufra track, which they watch for 3 days. This is their first reconnaissance of the war, and seeing no Italians at all, Clayton returns to Cairo with his intelligence, having covered 1,600 miles in 13 days. Wavell is impressed and decides to allow the long-range patrol group to be fully operational. Therefore, Bagnold splits his force into 3 groups. W Patrol is commanded by Captain Mitford. T Patrol is commanded by Captains Clayton and Ballantyne. R Patrol is commanded by Captain Steele. Each patrol has 25 men of other ranks on 10 trucks and a pilot car, with enough rations and equipment for a 1,500 mile journey. Each patrol also has a 3.7mm Bofors anti-aircraft gun, 4 Boys anti-tank rifles and 15 Lewis guns. On the 5th of September, Bagnold accompanies W Patrol from Cairo and drives 350 miles southwest to Ain Dalla. They reach the Libyan Desert Sea on the 11th of September at Big Cairn, where they meet up with T and R patrols. Big Cairn is a 5-foot high mound of rocks that Clayton built in 1932. R Patrol heads back to ferry supplies between Siwa and their current position, whilst T Patrol heads south towards Chad. This leaves W Patrol and Captain Mitford to head west. After a few days of blistering heat, they visit 2 Italian landing grounds between Guile and Kufra, which the Italians aren't guarding. So they smash the fueling and navigation apparatus before moving southeast towards Wadi Zigen. On the 19th of September, 2 lorries carrying Italian supplies are intercepted. Captain Mitford orders a burst of machine gun fire and the trucks come to a halt. The Italians surrender without a fight, and their vehicles carrying 2,500 gallons of petrol and a bag of official mail fall into British hands. After a brief reconnaissance of Uweinat, all are taken back to Cairo, which they arrive at on the 4th of October. Covered in a second skin of grime, their clothes have to be peeled off their flesh and burned. But in Cairo, they become a sensation overnight. They've travelled 1,300 miles and brought back with them a bag of Italian mail. Wavell is so impressed, he sends a telegram to the War Office detailing their exploits. Secretary of State for War Anthony Eden visits them on the 16th at their barracks and is incredibly impressed with what he sees. Between the 24th of October and the 8th of November, WT and R patrols move out once more. Moving to Uweinat again, they head out onto the main road north of Guile. They lay mines, attack enemy vehicles, and take more Italian prisoners. Captain Clayton captures the fort of Al Jaila, west of Guile, after one burst of gunfire, which sends the garrison fleeing to the nearby village. One Libyan prisoner comes back to Cairo with them, and Clayton ends up covering 2,100 miles in 15 days. The Libyan prisoner reveals that the Italians had reacted to the patrols by not allowing any vehicles to go to Kufra except in a convoy with extra protection. The Italians are reporting noises to their commanders and jumping at ghost patrols imagined all over Libya. This is further proof that the patrols are having a significant impact on Italian morale. In fact, Marshal Graziani had to reinforce the Italian positions, consume transport, and provide escorts for his men. The whole issue in the south places doubts in Graziani's mind about Wavell's material shortages, and he wonders if his own reports are accurate. On the 22nd of November, Bagnold is promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, and granted the authority to expand his unit to 2 more squadrons of 3 patrols. The group is therefore renamed the Long Range Desert Group, and a legend is born. It has been suggested by some authors, including some officers of the British Army at the time, that the Long Range Desert Patrols is one of the main factors contributing to the failure of the Italian offensive into Egypt in 1940. Whilst they certainly weakened the Italian 10th Army further, were they really the primary reason for the defeat? Reasons suggested by others conclude that the Italian army simply wasn't prepared for war, chose to march en masse into Egypt without an effective logistical system, and that Italian grand strategy was non-existent.
and they were perhaps the real reasons for failure. My video on Operation Compass goes into the Italian failure in the desert during 1940 and 41, links in the description, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.
For several hours, but by this point 8,000 prisoners had been taken. 8,000! The Australian casualties were nowhere near that, although they did lose a couple of platoons of infantry and some Crusader tanks.